Great. I'm going to now walk you through my presentation, which I call Why That Compliance Executive and Not Me, How You Can Be the One Reporters Call. So if you see someone in your area of compliance or in financial services being quoted in the news, and you're thinking, why are they talking to that person and not me? I know everything about that subject. And here's your answer. Reporters call the people they know. They do not call a compliance executive that they never heard of. Because why would a reporter call you? They don't know your name, they don't know what you can speak about, and they don't know that you have insights that the market needs to hear about how they could be handling their operations, how they could be in compliance with new directives or new regulations, and how your firm is protecting your clients' assets. So what we're going to talk about today are a few items. First, I will show you how to professionally introduce yourself to a reporter so that you will be the one that reporters call. I'm also going to provide you with a list of directories of sources. If a reporter has a question and they don't have someone in their database that they can contact, they may very well look in a directory to find an expert who can help them answer the particular question that they have. And this is like the lottery. You have to be in it to win it. If you can list yourself in a directory, then you increase your chances that you will be the one who will get the call. Now, you've gotten the call. We're going to talk about how you can respond to a reporter's questions and be more memorable and quotable. So this is our agenda for today. But before I go any further, I want to ask the group assembled if you, and take your mute off, if you have any expectations that you want to make sure that I cover in the course of this presentation.
I'll kick off, but no, I think that's great, Janet. And obviously, we have our Women to Watch list that I mentioned, which I want to make sure that more reporters and especially the specialist risk ones are aware of. But it'll be interesting to see how we may need to evolve that as well to make sure that it's clear how and who reporters should contact.
Thank you, Kimberly. Anyone else who has a comment about what their expectation might be? You signed up for this webinar for a reason, obviously.
Honestly, it's a topic that I really hadn't thought much about, but something that I find very intriguing and would love to learn more about.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Janet. Hi, everyone. For me, it's pretty much the same. I've been in the corporate world for a very long time. And so talking to journalists back then was very much a no-no because of some internal rules. Now that I work for myself and I've got my own consultancy, then I feel that it's the time to actually create those relationships because I can speak more freely and I can bring like a different angle to the table. So I want to kind of understand how I can do that. And that's why I'm joining today. So thanks a lot, Janet, for sharing your insights.
No, I'm very glad to help you with that. I think launching an independent consultancy is a challenge, and raising your hand and being noticed by reporters is certainly going to be helpful. So with that, if there's no other comment, I'm going to continue. And so let's think, why is it that you want to be in the news? Obviously, if like the last speaker, you've just launched your business or you're struggling to become more noticed, then you want to attract clients. Can you think of some other reasons why you might want to be in the news? I'm asking the group.
To make a difference, to make a change.
That's good. Anyone else?
build thought leadership on a topic that one is actually passionate about?
Excellent. Yes, we will touch on that.
To create some legitimacy.
Excellent. To create authority and legitimacy. Okay, in fact, those are some of the things that I had in mind when I was assembling this presentation. So one of the reasons why you want to be seen in the news is to be top of mind with your referral sources, because there's many people that you know throughout your circles, in your professional life, in your personal life. And when they see you in the news, then they remember, oh, yes, I know her. In fact, that's a problem that my client has. I should put the two of them together. As what was mentioned about thought leadership and your legitimacy and your authority, you will build your reputation and your personal brand when people see you talking about timely issues. You will be able to keep up with your contacts, people that you know from your previous firm, people that you know from networking contacts, people who are also members of Risky Women, people who you may have served on a panel with or served on a committee with. All of these people will be seeing you in the news, and then they will be thinking of you. If you're trying to grow your firm, then being in the news can help you recruit other talent. Who doesn't want to work for that hot firm that's always getting quoted in the news? And as I said, reporters call the people that they know. Well, who do you think conference organizers call? They call the people that they see in the news, because those are the people who have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the marketplace. And that's what conference attendees want to hear. So all of these are the reasons why you want to be in the news. As was mentioned, it shows your thought leadership, it shows your authority, you will attract clients, you will be top of mind with your referral sources and keep in touch with many people in your network. And you can be invited to speak at conferences, and being seen in the news can help you to grow your talent base, because people will want to work for that kind of a firm that's in the news. Today, I'm going to talk to you about two tools of the trade that I use. The first is a media profile, and I'll explain that in detail. And you will get a sample media profile with a worksheet that you can practice with. And then if you want to get in touch with me and review it, I will give you a complimentary consultation. So the first tool is the media profile, and then we'll get into specific tips that you can use when you're speaking with reporters. So what is this media profile that you've never heard of? It is not your resume. It is not your curriculum vitae, your CV. It doesn't say what your education and experience is. And it doesn't describe or list any articles that you might have published, whether they're in legal publications, business publications, financial services industry publications. All of that information is in the bio on your firm website, or it's on your LinkedIn profile. So you don't need to be repeating that, because that's not going to be helpful to reporters. A media profile is your way to professionally introduce yourself to a reporter, and it's going to answer three very important questions. The first question is, why you? Why should a reporter be calling you? Because there are other compliance professionals out there. There are other industry observers out there. What is it about you that you have a unique point of view, that you have an insight that the market needs to hear about? The second question is, why now? What is happening now in the marketplace, or in regulatory affairs, or with artificial intelligence? What is happening now that a reporter needs to speak with you? They didn't hear from you last week or last month. How has the market, or how have operations and regulations changed that a reporter needs to speak with you? So let's remember, we're talking about why you and nobody else. and why now? Because something is different and you have an insight to share. And this is the third question, the most important one, which is, why should their readers care? What is it about what you have to say that's going to help someone else to save time, save money, and make more money? Because we're in the financial markets and it's all about investments and making money. And if you can give an insight into an issue in compliance that will help another person or a firm to save time and to save money, then what are they going to do with that? They're going to be able to make more money. So when we're talking about a media profile, we want to answer these three questions: why you, why now, and why anyone else should care about the insight that you're about to share with them. Now you may think, Janet, this is all very well and good, but we're in compliance and we need to be proven. We need to show the evidence for what it is that we're about to embark on. So here's the evidence. This is from a reporter on the legal beat, but I think you can see it applies to every professional who wants to be seen in the news. And what does this reporter ask for? A 50-word explanation of what an attorney or any professional knows about a subject to determine whether it is worth calling that person. So it's not me saying a media profile will professionally introduce you to reporters. Here's a reporter who wants to know, what do you know about a subject? And if you know something that's valuable to my readers, then I will determine it is worth calling you. So now I'm going to walk you through the media profile. And as I said, you will get a sample and a worksheet so that you can look at this on your own time. So the first part of the media profile is simply your contact information. So it's your name, the name of your firm or your company, your address, your phone number, and your email address. You put that all at the top so it makes it easy for the reporter to keep track of it and put you in their database. Now, the next part is to broadly describe your background and your experience. Not a whole lot of words, 3 to 5 sentences should cover it. And here's an example. So this person is the Chief Compliance Officer of the name of this particular asset management firm. She has broad experience managing risk in institutional portfolios. And where is she focused? On Europe and Asia. And what areas particularly does she look at? Fixed income and derivative products. So you can see that without going into a lot of detail, we've explained who this person is, Chief Compliance Officer, how she manages risk in certain portfolios and in certain markets with a focus on particular asset classes. But this is not enough detail. Let's dig in a little deeper and describe more specifically what is included in your background and your expertise. So here are some bullet points that says she works on fixed income in a particular industry, which may be finance, or it may be utilities, or it may be energy or manufacturing. Or she focuses on specific industries within a given region. So it may be Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, or it may be Germany and Austria, or so on. Or she focuses on certain kinds of investors within her firm. They look at sovereign funds, or they look at pension funds, or they're concerned with family offices. So you can see that now we're getting more specific about what are the areas that you are mostly focused on. But that's not enough. We have to think about what are the trends that people need to know more about. Now, reporters know what already happened. We all know what already happened. They want to know what's going to happen before it happens so that their readers can be more alert and take opportunities to make more money. Right? So what are some trends that you have noticed on the horizon, things that may be flying under the radar that people are not paying attention to, but are going to have an impact. So there could be some complicated issue that people need to hear more about, and it's only a knowledgeable compliance professional who can simplify very technical aspects of this issue and make it clear why people of a certain type or investors in a certain asset class should be concerned. It may be that there's a new regulation and asset management companies are going to have to change their operations in some way in order to be in compliance. It may be that there's some law on a particular topic and institutional investors or family offices or sovereign funds are going to have to make some changes in order to adapt to the new situation. So it's not just describing your background in general terms. It's not simply saying specifically, I look at these markets, this asset class, or these kinds of investors. It's also, what do people need to hear that is not being talked about because reporters want to grasp and share with their readers what's flying under the radar and how they can be better positioned to save time, save money, and make more money. Now, one thing I like to include is a sample quote. So this gives the reporter an idea of what it would be like to have a conversation with you. Now, this is a very generic quote, but I think it'll give you the idea. So the top asset management firms who are focused on ESG issues, which we know is a hot topic, are gearing up for the implementation of this new regulation. When is it going into effect? In January. So they're gearing up now. This is coming down the pike. And why are they gearing up? Because the operations team has to prepare and test their systems. And the marketing team has to be in touch with clients and let them know that there's going to be some change. Including this quote makes you more of a real person so that the reporter gets an idea of what it would be like to have a conversation with you. Now, you're a very busy person, so you may not be able to take your own phone calls unless, of course, you're an independent consultant, as was mentioned. So you want to include the contact information of whoever is going to be handling making appointments with you. I want to point out here that you probably have a colleague at your firm who, as was mentioned, determines who gets to speak to the media and what they're going to talk about and so on. So before you go introducing yourself to reporters, make sure that you are in coordination with the marketing person, the public relations person, the outside public relations agency or media relations professional who is dealing with your firm. Because the firm may have a certain agenda and it may want to be not seen or it may want to be seen discussing a particular message. So you don't want to be going out in front when the firm has a slightly different take. So as much as I encourage you to reach out to reporters, I want you to first be in touch with whoever it is at your firm who handles these kinds of external communications so that you are in sync. Besides, if they already have a relationship with a reporter who may be interested in speaking with someone like yourself, you want to be able to take advantage of that. And so that will be a warm call instead of a cold call. Now, how does that media profile actually work? Here's an example. I worked with a woman attorney and she had a bankruptcy practice and she focused on the airline industry. Now, I know this is not exactly compliance, but just think of it as a general example. So there are a lot of issues with the airline industry and many people care about what happens there. They may not invest in airline stocks per se, but they may have clients who are associated with the airline industry. They may operate a resort or a hotel, and that's a destination that people have to fly there in order to get to that particular location. So there are a lot of people who care about the airline industry. And when I arranged for her to talk with a reporter from Reuters about the airline industry and bankruptcy issues, they had a very interesting conversation. His focus was the airline industry. Her focus was bankruptcy issues in the airline industry. So maybe 5 weeks after they had this conversation, there was a news report published by this reporter at Reuters. And it said, prospects of bankruptcy in the airline industry. Gee whiz, how did the reporter get the idea for writing that kind of a story? And this attorney was mentioned in the news article 5 times. And to show it was a little more rounded, the reporter spoke with an industry analyst at an international bank. So you can see what happened. I arranged the introduction with the media profile. The reporter was interested. They had a meeting. The reporter wrote an article. And guess what? The attorney's phone began to ring because a lot of people were interested in the airline industry, in the prospect of bankruptcy. And so this was a great opportunity for her to be seen as an authority, to be seen as a legitimate observer of the industry, what was happening with airlines, and the prospect of bankruptcy. Now, you will get a sample media profile and a worksheet, as I said, and I encourage you to think about these questions. Why should a reporter talk to you and not anyone else? Why they should want to speak with you now, because there's been some change that people need to be aware of, and why anyone should care about what you have to say, because if they only knew what Kimberly knows or what Janet knows, then they would save time, save money, and make more money. So think about those trends that you might be observing in the marketplace, and think about what is the particular asset class that you work with, or what is the issue that you find coming up with ESG or with artificial intelligence, or who are the clients that are posing these kinds of questions to you. So now I'm going to pause for just a minute and see, what is your reaction? Is this something that you would consider doing?
Yeah, this is really good to know because I'm looking into starting some kind of a venture. So kind of getting out there, knowing how to market yourself is very important. And so this is some things that I had never really thought of. This is very helpful.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And most of my clients say, I never thought about this that way. Anyone else care to comment?
So I have been speaking at conferences and also writing articles, but I think today, everything that you've said so far really brings everything together. It has to be done in a structured manner, be very focused so that the right people, I think when I first joined, I was under the impression that, reporter, that you had to speak up or you're going to raise an alarm bell, kind of like a whistleblower. And I found out that I got this all wrong. I'm probably the only one who actually came into this meeting with that in mind, right? So just thinking about this holistically, is like you want the right people as well to be speaking to you. And how you actually present yourself, how you brand yourself, how you sell yourself, what kind of expert are you trying to present yourself is going to be very, very crucial, so that the right people are coming to get information which you are very passionate about sharing. And I think that really struck a note with me. So thank you very much.
No, I'm glad that this is working for you. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so now I want to talk about what are some moments when you might want to be seen in the news. So here's a list of 6 moments. The first is when there is a new regulation or a new law, right? So this is something that's going to have an impact, and you want to be able to speak to that opportunity and say who it's going to affect, how it's going to affect them, if it's going to cost more money, and what is it going to mean, not only today, but moving into the future. So that's one reason that's one moment when you might want to be in the news. Now, it may be that you work for a larger institution and they're issuing a report. So this is another time when you could be talking to reporters, telling them what's in the report, why is this important, why should people care? It could be that there's a major event that took place. When we think about, when there was the tsunami a couple of years ago and how that sent reverberations through the financial markets. So if there's an event that's taking place in the past and it's coming up on an anniversary, then you want to be able to talk about what happened then and what changes were made and what's happening now and how this is going to play out in the future. Maybe you're publishing an article, or as was just mentioned, you're speaking at a conference. So this is an opportune moment to say, this is an article that I've published, or I've spoken at this conference, these are the points that I made, this is what people need to be hearing about now. Maybe there's just something that occurs to you that people are not paying attention to. You have a point of view, it needs to be heard, it's going to have an impact on the way operations are handled internally, it's going to have an effect on communications with investors, and so on. Maybe you are hiring a new person at your firm. Maybe you have been promoted at your firm. Maybe you are launching your new business. Maybe someone is retiring. So these are other opportunities when you can be reaching out to reporters and mentioning this announcement and seeing what the impact is going to be for the growth of your particular firm. So I want you to think about these and consider which of these news opportunities has your firm pursued in the past. And let's think about also which they would consider pursuing or they would not consider pursuing because it may be that they are a low profile. So I'm interested in your responses if these situations have happened at your firm. You've added a new office in a different country, or you're publishing a report or an article, you're speaking at a conference, there's a change in the law or a change in regulations, and so on. Are these opportunities that your firm has pursued or that they have not pursued? And now that we're talking about it, maybe they should consider it. Any response? Well, let's go back to the woman who said that she speaks at conferences. Is this something that your firm or you would consider sharing your insight from the presentation you gave at the conference with reporters?
So that would be me, sorry. We have a strict internal policy on speaking on behalf of the firm. So in the situations where I've actually spoken at conferences or written about it, I've had to say that this view is entirely my own, which I'm happy to do so, because I'm also pursuing a higher degree, and part of the requirements as well is I do have to speak, and it's also part of personal growth. I see it that way. Mm-hmm. But all of this that you've listed here, I think, so speaking on behalf of myself, so a new regulation or law, definitely, but because I work in ethics and compliance, a lot of it has to do with building culture. Like, you shouldn't have to want to do something because you had to do it, because you were told to do so. You would want to do it because it's within your DNA. it's within your culture and you feel good when you're doing something that aligns with your values. So in a way, so I think in that sense, that's why the company feels comfortable, because even if I was speaking on behalf of myself, it also aligns at the top line is that it still aligns with the high level, the direction is still pretty much similar without me actually talking about, okay, here's what our company does. Yeah, but here's what I believe in and here's what I've done. And it seems like what the response that I've received is that, well, your company is clearly empowering you to do this, even if they're telling you to keep your views your own, but they're empowering you, they're allowing you to do that, which means that they actually do believe. And in a way that indirectly builds up the brand, at least for my department, if not for the company, I suppose. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So your company has a way of creating or allowing you to pursue opportunities, but it's largely on the individual level. It's not necessarily to be promoting the company. So that's interesting. And as I said, it's good that you are working through the company channels in order to make sure that, the line is clearly drawn about their being aware of your speaking opportunities and so on. Great. Anyone else who wants to be able to comment about which opportunities your firm has or has not pursued? Okay, so now I'm going to move on, and I want to show you this amusing cartoon. I think you'll get a kick out of this. So here is this woman, maybe even a woman of color, and she's speaking to a panel of men, right? Men, seemingly identical men. And what does the caption say? Describe what you can bring to this company, right? So obviously, women are bringing a diverse perspective to the marketplace in every market where they operate. So there is, as Kimberly pointed out, a dearth of women who are speaking out in the media. And there is, at the same time, an increased awareness among journalists who want to be citing more women as sources. So here's a reporter from Bloomberg News, and what did he say? Half of the sources I quoted this year for business on Bloomberg News were women. And he firmly believes diversing sources is about far more than numbers. It gives you a competitive advantage over your competition and leads to more interested and higher impact stories. So Bloomberg is actually putting money and muscle behind the idea of using more women as sources. They have been tracking their sources and have a global database of women who are their sources. So these are the latest statistics that I could get. You can see in 2018, there were only 500 women in their database of sources. And now in 2024, more recently, look at that number, 8,400. And that is all kinds of markets and all kinds of sources. So Bloomberg has really ramped up its efforts to add to its database of women sources. They even have an initiative called New Voices, where they identify women who are leaders in business and finance, and they give them media training. So not only they add them to the database, but they are training them to be more effective speakers when dealing with Bloomberg reporters. And of course, they take that same training when they speak to reporters from the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal, right? They don't hide their training from other reporters. So look at these statistics, how often women were quoted in Bloomberg stories. In 2018, only 2%. And in 2020, after they had expanded their database and were providing this media training, 17%. Still room for improvement. And on Bloomberg Television, where they interview people in more depth, 10% of their participants were women in 2018, and they tripled that number, 34% in 2023. So Bloomberg not only is developed this database, and not only is providing training for women to be more effective spokespeople and sources for the media, but they are actively using this resource because they are quoting more women in their own stories and featuring more women in interviews in Bloomberg Television. But it's not only Bloomberg. Here the New York Times is looking for editors, letters to the editor, and they're trying to increase the number of letters written by women. And the Financial Times, which I'm sure is important to your readers, your investors, and your colleagues, is tracking. Are articles quoting too many men? Then we should be getting more women that we can quote as sources. So here are some directories that I have compiled, and these are in the United States. And you can self-inscribe in many of these directories. You can go to this website and you can inscribe yourself, and you can list what is your background, what are the topics you want to talk about, and so on. Now I want to point out that this is no guarantee, but as I said about the lottery, you have to be in it to win it. If other colleagues in compliance are listed in these directories, then they're going to get the call and not you. Now, here are some global directories where you can also be listing yourself. And you will get these slides so that you can go into these websites and find out how you can describe your background, provide your contact information, and notice which are the hot issues that people need to be paying attention to. This is the second page, even more directories where you can be listed. Now, as I said, there are no guarantees that once you're listed, you will get calls from reporters. But if you're not listed, you're definitely not going to get the call. Okay, any questions about this? Anyone ready to sign up?
Great, Janet. Yeah, good to see all these lists.
Okay, so now let's say you have introduced yourself to a reporter with your media profile, or you have listed yourself in one of these directories. How are you going to respond when the reporter calls you? So here are 3 very important tips that I want you to take to heart. And the first one is, a reporter is not your friend. This is a business conversation. Even if you and the reporter went to the same university, even if the reporter dated your cousin, a reporter is not your friend. So I want you to think that anything you say can be used in print and in online publications or recordings. Now I noticed that someone's AI note taker is a part of this meeting. Don't you think reporters are using AI the same way to record their conversations with you on Zoom? So if you do not want to see it in the news, don't say it. Now you may think about, is this on the record? Is this off the record? Is this on background? Is this on deep background? So on the record means you can use it. Off the record means I'm going to tell it to you, but I wish you wouldn't use it. On background means you can mention this, but it has to be anonymous. And on deep background means you can't mention this, you can't say where you got it, but you have to remember that this is for your own education, because this is a very complicated and complex and sensitive situation. So my suggestion to you is don't bother with any of this. Consider that everything you said is going to be on the record. And if you want to say something and maybe keep it out of the reporter's write-up of the story, you must have an agreement about this up front. Before you start the conversation, you have to say, this is not for publication, because you can't change your mind in the middle. So my advice to you is consider everything that you say is going to be on the record. And if you don't want to see it in the news, then don't say it. So now, point number 2, you must prepare for your interview in advance. It's been said many times by my colleagues, a media interview is a bad time to have an original thought. You want to think about what you want to say and not be coming up with something on the spot. If they ask you a question, you can always get back to them with a more well-crafted answer. So as part of your preparation, I want you to make a list of 3 important points that you want to discuss. And look at this. You want to print it in a very large font. And why is that? Because when you have it printed out in front of you, the reporter, who's probably talking to you on the phone or on Zoom, cannot see what's on your desk. So this is your reminder of the 3 points that you want to talk about, and in a large font so that you can easily read it. Now, oftentimes you get to the end of the interview and the reporter says, is there anything else that you would like to add? And you look at your 3 points and you think, oh my goodness, I forgot to talk about point number 1. So that's why you prepare in advance. You have 3 points and you print it in a large font in front of you on a piece of paper where the reporter cannot see it, so that you will remember the 3 ideas that you most clearly want to articulate and get across. Now that you have your 3 ideas, you're going to create memorable examples of each of these points. And you want these to be memorable and quotable so that they will find their way into the news story. So the first way to do this, and I call this the 4 A's. You'll learn why in just a moment. So the first A is acronym. You take an acronym that everybody knows. Say it's ASAP, right? But instead, you give it a little twist. So you make it slightly different. And you say, as soon as profitable, right? So that's not what everybody thinks, but you say ASAP, as soon as profitable. Or you can come up with your own acronym, like WWJD. What would Janet do, right? So now you have created your own acronym and you've explained it so that it will be more memorable and quotable. You can also explain your 3 points with an analogy. You can say, this is just like, this is something that this is just like a revolving door, right? A revolving door because it goes around and around and it never gets anywhere. So now you have created a visual image of a revolving door, and the reporter is going to remember this and think of it for their story. So an acronym where you give it a twist, and analogy where you describe something compared to something else. You can give an anecdote. You can briefly give an example that shows how something works or how it's going to have consequences in the future. And finally, you can use alliteration. What have I done here? I've said acronym, analogies, anecdotes, alliteration. They all start with the letter A. So now you're going to remember the 4 A's. These are ways that you can give memorable examples of your 3 points. And there are some others. You can use a visual image, as I said. This is a revolving door, goes around and around, never gets anywhere. You can use wordplay, where you create a pun or some sort of a joke. You can refer to popular culture. or you can use a rhyme. So say your firm handles, many different asset classes in their investment strategy. You can say we are a one-stop shop, right? One-stop shop. You can see the rhyme play in that particular phrase. So let's summarize what it is that we have been talking about here. We've talked about why you want to be in the news, to attract more business, of course, but also to be top of mind with your referral sources, to keep in touch with your many contacts, to establish your thought leadership and your authority, to attract new talent to your firm. We've talked about the media profile, how it describes your background and how it points out things that people should be thinking about, trends that are flying below the radar that reporters will catch on to because they want to know what's going to happen before it happens. And your media profile will stress why you and nobody else who is like you in the market. Why now? Because there's some change or some issue that people need to care about. And finally, why they should care. Because if they only knew what you know, they would save time, save money, and make more money. We talked about moments when you can be seen in the news because you're issuing a report or you're speaking at an event or there's an anniversary of an important event that had consequences and ripple effects for the market, and you can talk about what happened then and what's happening now and what it means for the future. If you're hiring, if you're promoting, if you're opening a new office, those are also reasons to be in the news. I mentioned how reporters at financial and general news publications are looking for for women to be quoted as their sources in their stories. And you now have the list of directories, both US and international, where you can inscribe yourself and describe your background so that you will be in it to win it, so that reporters will look in that directory and find your name. And finally, you have learned how to be more memorable and more quotable by keeping in mind whatever you say can be written up in the news. Keeping in mind that you must prepare. Have your 3 ideas printed out in a large font in front of you so that you can go back to them and make sure that you have covered all your ideas. Have examples so that you can use an acronym, an analogy, an anecdote, alliteration, a visual image, a pun, a rhyme, something that will make you more memorable and more quotable. So here is my contact information. You will get a copy of the slides, as I mentioned. You will get a sample media profile and a worksheet that you can develop so that you can share that with me. And I'm happy to give you a complimentary consultation. I guarantee 2 ideas. If you want to be in touch with me, I have a monthly newsletter. I'm active on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. So I hope that I have met your expectations about something that you have not considered before, something that would be valuable to you in showcasing your firm, your new consultancy. And these are experiences that you might be eager to have, talking to reporters, as I said, consistent with your firm's policy. So I'm happy to take your questions, and let's hear what you have to say and respond.
Really great, Janet. I mean, I think so many good little tips and ideas. I love the 4 A's. It's a fantastic way to just sort of try to keep something in your mind to be memorable. And I think, yeah, you've definitely should have added to everyone's superpowers.